I'm Susanna Clements. I've spent nearly 30 years working in human resources. I know we're not supposed to call it that anymore, apparently, people. I was the Deputy Chief Executive of the CIPD for some time as well, and I now work with senior HR people. So, as a practitioner, it's been a really interesting couple of days, and I'd say a couple of things. One is there's been lots and lots of stuff about the future of work, and some really amazing insights into what's going on. One of the things I think is quite interesting is what we haven't talked about is the element of choice. So I still cook, even though I don't have to. I enjoy driving my car. I go for walks for pleasure. And I think if we look at the automation of the world's work, like I love my dishwasher, but I actually think we need to understand the element of choice about choices that humans make, and as psychologists, you're in a great place to start thinking about that, which is what we're going to choose, and how are we going to choose to live our lives, and what elements of this technology is helpful. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I'm going to talk politics here, which I never normally do, so people probably start freaking out. In 2016, we've seen a whole series of hugely important decisions being made on the basis of very little fact and very little evidence. And complicated human decisions are very difficult. And I see something very similar in the workplace, where lots and lots of things happen which are based on precisely no evidence whatsoever, but based on what we like, what we did before. And people who know me know I will rant on about executive pay at great length, and if anybody gives me a drink this evening, I'm really happy to hold forth about it. But most of the present principles that people trot out about executive pay are not underpinned by any evidence whatsoever. But try taking it away, and you'll have a number of problems. So as business psychologists, I guess my plea to you is to help organisations make decisions based on rational thought, and help and question and stand up for the fact that when people say things just because it's convenient to believe and lazy, that actually you say, that's not how it works, here's some evidence. So one of the things I'm doing, which means I'll be unfriended by almost everybody I know on Facebook, is when I see a post which is obviously not true, and there are a lot of them, which people repost. There's a site called Snopes. I don't know if people know Snopes, but it's a myth-busting site which investigates Facebook rumours. And I go on Snopes and I check it out and I post a link which says this isn't true. So I guess what I'm asking you to do in organisations is to start questioning the assumptions which drive some of the worst possible organisational behaviours. And by 2030, we'll have a set of organisations that Oliver James will be proud of. So, okay.
Should we do a non-business psychologist first and then go back to a business psychologist?
Up to you.
I think it's probably better to go.
Hello. So robots will take over. We don't want them. And the thing about choice is a very important point. So I'm Volker. I think what is called an expert generalist. I'm by training a lawyer, mergers and acquisitions and that sort of stuff. And for the past 16, 17, 18 years or so, an entrepreneur. I've founded or helped found 7 or 8 companies to date. Some failures, rather spectacular success, which is why I work at BlackBerry, because I never applied for a job and they forced me to come with the company we sold to them. Mainly in technology. I'm a venture partner at Europe's largest education tech accelerator here in London. And most of my angel investments are in that space, as well as increasingly now in IoT and related things.
Okay, so I'm Gorkan. I'm a lecturer at UCL. I'm also the co-founder of a company called Meta Profiling, and basically my background is I'm a business psychologist, and a lot of my work has looked at innovation and how to become entrepreneurial, what entrepreneurial people do and how to actually identify them and place them in the right context. I have done a lot of assessment, and I don't know, I've been hearing like, assessment is dead, or there are more ways of doing assessment, and I think to a certain extent that's right, but I think there's like a long way to go, because for me the ultimate thing to do is actually get very close to understanding what a person will think, feel, or how they will behave in a particular context. And I think we're pretty far from doing that at the moment. And at the same time, I think we probably have the technology to get much closer to that. And I think what is lacking as business psychologists is not necessarily that we are not trying to assess people. We're trying to do that. I think we can do it much better with new technology. But we really haven't done much on the kind of environmental aspect of like where do individuals actually prosper? Where do they feel better? Where are they in a flow? Where is their mental health better? Where is their performance better? So we have very little answers to those questions in my view. Like we are really bad at predicting like that individual will be suited to that particular environment. And then we also don't have a lot of information on what are the optimal environments in the first place. Like generally, what is good for people in the workforce, like people doing work. What's the best environment for someone to work in? So I think this is an area that there's lots of work to be done as business psychologists actually, because we should be given the expertise in terms of what dimensions to assess and these new technologies, how can we utilize those new technologies in that way. And also the final thing I think about is that innovation for me is not something that should make things worse. It's something that should make things better. That's by definition almost. That's for me what innovation is. Maybe not by definition, but that's kind of the connotation of innovation, almost the purpose. If innovation isn't for something good, then what's the point of it? I mean, that's what I don't really. What is our goal with innovation? Is something that I would like to ask. What is our goal if not to improve things? What is the goal then, if not to improve things? So surely we should also think about, as business psychologists, which innovations don't actually promote well-being of individuals at work, and which innovations don't promote the performance of workers at work. So these are the kind of two key things that I think there's lots of work to do in business psychology. I really don't think we will be out of work anytime soon. And then obviously, if not, I think for sure we will have work with like mental health and treating people who are really not doing that well at work or are unemployed.
Oh, you're a business psychologist, right? So I'm Michael Rendell, a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I started out in the world of tax, so I trained with the Inland Revenue, would you believe. But I set up our HR consulting practice in the UK, and then I did that globally. And HR consulting is would you believe, a $2 billion business for PwC, so a huge part of what we do. My current role is looking after innovation and how do we transform PwC as a business, as an entity, as an organisation into its future state, which will be very different to the way it is today, which will be very different to the way it was 5 years ago. So just thinking through, and it's quite hard going second or third because all the good things have been said, but for me, the critical challenge that comes out of the subject that you've been spending the last couple of days on is, we can't predict the future. The world of work is going to be very different to anything that we've ever seen, I believe, in human history, as we move into this technology-enabled world. And anybody that doubts that, anybody that says that's hype, and we're right up there at the extreme, think about things like, and these are going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years. These are not out there. We're going to have electronic implants in our brain to connect us directly to the internet. So you're not going to need to use your computer anymore. We're going to be able to biologically re-engineer the human genome, and we're going to be able to live for 140 years. So people are not going to retire until they're in their hundreds. So think about what that's going to do, yeah? And you're going to live healthily. You're not going to sort of sit in a home for 50 years, you're going to live healthily. So think about what that's going to do to the world of work. The jobs that people will be doing in 15 years' time nobody's heard of today. So think about it like that. And the work that we've done around what the key attributes of success will be in that future world, I can't say this is the right job. Business psychologists absolutely are going to be there, very top of the tree. But I can't say what the other successful jobs are going to be, but I can describe their characteristics. And for me, there are two characteristics, and I think it plays brilliantly to the thinking that you as an organisation do, and that you as specialists do, and that's around how human beings collaborate. The organisations that will succeed and have succeeded in this new emerging world are those where the people, the workers, collaborate in the most effective way. Now that collaboration might be with other human beings, it might be with your smart, artificially intelligent assistant, it might be with the robot that brings you a cup of coffee, but how do you collaborate as human beings? And that's the thing that will drive success. And I think the subsidiary that comes from that then is how agile you are as an individual. And if you look at countries, if you look at individuals, and if you look at companies that are successful, it's the ones who are agile, so being comfortable to change. So if I was to say, what should you concentrate on, I'd say it's how do you promote collaboration, how do you get human beings to work together and human beings to work with technology, and then how do you get people to feel comfortable with agility and change, which are quite scary things. Apart from that, I don't know what other skills you need.
Okay, I'm David. I'm a business psychologist, but I've worked in business all my life, not really as a psychologist. So the psychology has always been second. So I've been a little bit of, had to come out of the closet really as a psychologist at certain points in my career. My view is for us in the future, I believe we need to be in the middle of the kind of seesaw. We've got technology on one side, and we've got all the emotions of people and all that stuff that is unmeasurable on the other side. And I think we're spending, at the moment, far too much time on all the stuff that's measurable, and not enough time on the stuff that isn't measurable. And we need to be in the middle. And that's it.
My name is Porter King, and I'm definitely not a business psychologist. I set up a company about 12 years ago called Changeboard, and our target audience, I suppose, are HR people, psychologists, and business leaders. 5 years ago, we set up the Future Talent Conference, which is in London and Riyadh in Saudi every year. And we're not there to teach people about the world of HR. If 20 years in you don't know about HR, you probably shouldn't go to our conference. We're trying to get the sentience out of you. We're trying to look at where the world is going and what's going on in the world of work. I also sit on the board of a couple of brand engagement companies and a management consulting firm as well. So I spend most of my days with people like yourselves, etc., getting a generic picture of what's going on. So jack of none. I'm really looking forward to some of the things that are coming in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think the curve we saw earlier on, the fear, etc., I think we need to embrace it. I think there'll be massive changes in organisations, particularly in job front. I completely agree with Mike and what he's saying. It's how do we overcome our fears, because there will be other jobs coming along. There will be different ways of working. Tax systems will be changed. People will be given allowances as citizens potentially. So we'll have portfolio careers, etc. My hope is that organisations also become socially conscious. So there's a great initiative, I don't know if anyone's been to it, 100% Human at Work, run by Mark Benioff and Richard Branson, which looks at the company and how it treats its locale globally. And I think that's becoming more and more important. So I'm really looking forward to this chat as a non-business psychologist.
Do we want to go back to Volker? Because I think Volker just sort of told us about himself and didn't sort of expand on his views.
I noticed that.
It's a trick.
It's not press. Your turn. Do you want to just...
Technology is wonderful.
Future work.
We need robotic microphones, I suppose. all the clever things have been said. What I tried to outline earlier was really on the issue of wake-up call, and because I think we all need that awareness, and people like you, and I alluded to that a little bit in my talk as well. You will have your hands full with managing people through that change curve. Human elements and what's in there have been described really well here. And agility, flexibility, and a certain amount of bravery to something that will come is required. Because I think we need to be clear about one thing. Today is the slowest progress that we will ever see in our lifetime. That is one of those things that technology will do. And it's not because technology is a beast of its own, but technology simply facilitates and speeds up things tremendously. So we need to teach our brains and hearts and souls to basically try and embrace that. I think that's to me the key point.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so shall we open up the room to questions? Who would like to go first?
Any other observations? Does anyone else want to throw out perhaps what you think some of the key opportunities are for us as...
Agree, disagree?
Over. Oh.
I just wanted to ask, because we've just been in a really interesting talk about relatedness, and you've all talked about how we connect and collaborate, and it seems like we're going to collaborate with similar-minded people. What about societies that are disconnected from this vast growth? I mean, not just countries, but communities as well. How will we embrace them?
I mean, one of the thoughts is around this diversity question, which is vital. We all talk about we want innovative people in our organisation. There are very few innovative people in the world, and if you don't trawl across a huge, diverse range of skills, backgrounds, experiences, the people that don't look and feel like you're going to miss out on that whole innovation piece. So I think one of the big challenges around how we connect with people that are not like us, how we collaborate with them, that's hard for human beings to do, very hard for human beings to do.
Yeah, and I also think that organisations are starting to recruit differently. So if you take a blunt example with Google, go back 3 years ago, if you didn't have a 2-1 minimum, red brick at the top end, or Oxford and Cambridge, you'd still be going through a 16-stage interview. You probably wouldn't hear back. You certainly would really be picked from a very small pool. Google changed this 18 months ago, where they want whip-smart people that can learn quickly and can change the times. So they will take people through apprenticeship schemes, etc. They will take people without degrees, and they're looking for that and also purpose, what they want to achieve with their life as well. It's all sort of intermingling.
Sorry, only just to add that Google point's really interesting. One of the ways that we recruit, and indeed Google and something, you put a puzzle out there on the internet, and people try to solve the puzzle. And it's your 21-year-old sitting in his room who's never been to university, dropped out of school, doesn't have any A-levels, is outside the system, but is brilliant at coding, and they solve that puzzle. And a little screen pops up and says, do you want to come for an interview? So that sort of, we've got to think very differently about connecting with those different groups.
I think, so this is how high-skilled people will find the jobs that they would otherwise have found elsewhere anyway. There are different types of diversity, and we as a society really have to be very, very careful there, because the 400 million unemployed cab drivers, etc., they won't be solving this puzzle. So this will be, if you want to, if I should add on to the whole dystopian thing from earlier on, we'll have to look at, and you alluded to this earlier, we'll have to look at societal deconstructions or reconstructions, so to speak. And because if we don't do that, then all the clever people will at some stage live in a compound behind a really, really high wall. And frankly, that's not a life I want to live. So, but if we act proactively on that and take a lead. And again, I think that was your appeal and your appeal and your appeal, into the organizations you work with. Then we can actually start to inform that, because only because I'm not educated to top spec, or my IQ maybe is not there to perform to the highest level, that doesn't mean that I'm invalid, that I'm not valued. And so we will have to relearn a couple of things in terms of what defines value as a human, and it's not the size of your paycheck.
I'd just like to talk about clever. Who's clever? The IQ test was devised for a certain type of person. There's lots of incredibly clever people out there who will never ever do very well at an IQ test. And I think we have to start thinking beyond all of this kind of putting people into boxes and open it right out, so that, dare I say it, sorry, that the people who are all going to be out of work driving cars are given the same opportunities as anybody else, and what they can be just as clever. I mean, I was in a taxi only 2 weeks ago, and the guy was studying for his PhD, for Christ's sake. So, it was in a subject that actually he wasn't going to make any money out of, but he wanted to do it. I mean, we have conceptions that we live our lives by, which I think we've got to step back and step up and look at things in a different way. And I think that's what psychologists should be doing. They should be sort of fighting against this approach to compartmentalising.
I'd like to ask a question, if that's okay. So, Mike, given you said that innovation is hugely important within PwC, and innovation and entrepreneurialism needs a certain culture to thrive, what are you doing within PwC to make sure or enable that to happen?
How do you create innovation in a huge organisation which is full of lots of very innovative and excited and young? The average age of people in PwC is 26. So, incredibly young workforce. But actually it's quite hard because, the fear of failure is there, and innovation, actually you've got to try 100 things and you probably get 99 of them wrong. And the final time you learn how to do it. That's not something that sits well with our culture. We've got to be right all the time. If we send you a letter, it's right. So how do you create a failure as something? I like to describe it as like nuclear. How do you create nuclear fission? You have to create some critical mass to put the right people together. You've got to allow them to spark off each other, and they create some heat. You've got to put a containment vessel around it, because actually those people can be quite dangerous. And if you're not careful, the rest of the business comes in and squashes them. So create a safe environment, allow them to fail, create some critical mass, and allow them to do some crazy things, and support them when it goes wrong.
And is that currently happening at PwC?
Yeah, we're running a program called Sandbox, where anybody in the firm can create an idea and can share that idea, and we look at those, and the ones that we like, we take forward, and we effectively give that person 6 months to go and develop their idea. And we provide them with money and support, and if they get it wrong, that's great, they learn from that. We like to say, when somebody brings you an idea, and we've all done it, I know, they bring you that crazy idea, and you say yes, but your face says no. And the person goes away, and you've kind of lost that person's trust. What we try to do, we don't get it right all the time, is we try to say yes and rather than yes but. I think that's a really good message for us. If somebody brings you that mad idea and you think that can't possibly work, just say yes, and why don't you think about this, or could you add this to it? And that gets a very different response.
Yeah. Just to add on to that, so in XLabs, Google's innovation unit, so to speak, if you work in there, one of your KPIs, and which will define the number of stock options you get and all that sort of shit, is the numbers of failures that you produce in a year. If you don't produce enough failures, you're doing something wrong. And I always pictured how it would have been in that Google board meeting or whatever it was, where this person came up and says, guys, I have a really cool idea. Now, what if we stick a camera on top of a car and let it drive through every freight road in the world and then make it available for free? How's that? Because, I mean, this is billions in investment, right? And in most normal organizations, you would go like, what have you been spying? But this is what you can get out of it. You know, this wasn't a strategic business decision that sometime in the future we will have this 3D augmented advertising billboard. This was basically just one of those moonshots.
Lucy, just very quickly, I think we were talking about this at an event we did at School of Life a couple of days ago. The organisations typically and historically that have been able to do this have been super cash rich tech companies from the Bay Area, and they've been able to indulge and allow people to do this stuff. How do you then cross that bridge into most other companies and get them to, and the simplicity of this, I think, is having time. If you've got time to think, if your company says to you, you can have 3 or 4 hours a week, or you can have half a day, rather than having this grinding culture that works you half to death and gives you no time to think innovatively, that's what we need to be pushing for organisations. And that's thinking about the sentient being within that organisation who then gets time and creates amazing stuff. That could be the most junior person in the organisation.
I mean, we're a partnership, a genuine partnership. We're a big organisation, but we've got no shareholders. So every year we divide the profits up and we start again. So every penny we devote to this. So yeah, in a cash poor business like ours, it's hard to find that. You've got to get people encouraged and you've got to protect them. Because the worst thing to happen is the business starts to grind forward, this new idea starts to get some traction, and somebody says, this month's budget, not looking so good, therefore we're going to kill it. That's the worst thing for innovation.
Yes, one of my companies, 25 people, a day every 2 weeks, basically the entire company does whatever it wants. And it is vitally important to not let this be impeded by deadlines and, oh guys, today, sorry we can't do this, we have this to come. Because that's when you can start crushing that culture. And we're a small self-finance business, we're not a cash poor partnership, for PwC.
That from a venture capitalist.
And of course, in a smaller organisation where you haven't got the money, hopefully you've got the energy.
I still find it slightly remarkable that I'm quite loud voice, so I probably don't need the mic. I still find it remarkable that most companies still can't work out the difference between the capability on the board of a CIO and a head of digital. You know, I mean, and then you add quarterly reporting to it. Where is this innovation coming through from?
If it's okay, I'd selfishly like to ask a question as well.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna add very little to that. I think, I think the points are great, and I think there's like thinking about it on a general level. Like, what are the general things that we can do that's going to increase innovation across the board? Probably work in most organizations, and then there is like, in practical terms, it often doesn't work to say these are the things that you need to do, because there's like a lot of political kind of barriers that you need to pass. So I think we also need to think practically in terms of how do we approach organizations, where do we actually start, and usually it's good to think about the specific organization. So what is the specific organization? Where could we potentially start this culture? Who do we need to win on board to actually implement these things? And then actually implement those sort of good suggestions that we had there. So I think it's a bit both general and specific level we need to think about in order to be able to infiltrate kind of that inertia towards creating new cultures of innovation.
Okay, I feel bad. This is like my third attempt at it now. Is there another one? Okay,
You have to wait.
What?
You have to wait.
God!
Sorry.
Sorry.
Then we have our next question here.
So I've been to 7 advanced meetings in the last 10 days, and all of them suggest that D&I, diversity and inclusion, lies at the heart of moving forward at the moment. Just an observation, if I look at this panel, diversity inclusion is not represented, so that's my challenge to ADP going forward.
My defense in ADP is that I'm going to be writing a book on gender differences and promoting women and all that. So I'm almost a woman. I'm almost a woman.
It depends, I haven't finished my question. It depends what you mean by diversity. So diversity doesn't necessarily mean gender or race or sexuality only. It can mean diversity of thinking, diversity of behaving, etc. But what I would like to know from the panel is, what is your understanding of diversity and inclusion?
So if I start off, the first thing I'd say was there was a question earlier about how do people connect and collaborate. And one of the things I think about technology is it makes it much, much easier, and it's one of the most amazing things about it. So my mother is 78 years old, she lives on her own, and she is massively active on the internet, God help us, but it just has been something for her which has been life-changing. So she is able, as somebody who would find it much more difficult to get out, to participate in a series of communities that she would never have found. Many of the educational initiatives, often run by American universities, have opened up knowledge to people across the world who would never have had the opportunity to participate. So one of the things I think about, we can look at how the differences between different sorts of education, but actually we are giving people opportunities that they would never have had by using technology. So for me, one of the amazing things about technology is it should allow us to have far more diverse interactions across the world. Now, some of the things that have been done have been about expert systems replicating the mores of the societies which produce them. So we found expert systems which replicate prejudice. Now again, as business psychologists, we know that we can design much, much better systems. So I guess for me, diversity inclusion has always been about facing a set of customers or a group of people with the same diversity in either side. So any organisation should be representing the diversity of its customers, and some of the things, and one of my worries about assessment and selection tools is that they filter that out, and I'm sure we've all had clients, because I've had one, which says, well, what we'll do is we'll look at the top team and we'll analyse them, and then you can do hard people that are the same. Well, and if you're the chief executive, and as we know they're all psychopaths, because we heard that this morning, it's what an ego trip. I'm just going to clone me, and it's all going to be great. So I think there is something about, again, trying to work out how we can have systems which do not build in the faults that we have as human beings. So in some ways they could be better. And my last thing, which again was another question earlier, is about trying to redefine what work is. So the work that's been talked about has been highly industrial and very economically based. So we've talked about Google and people like that. But as human beings, we get satisfaction from work that isn't necessarily paid for, or work that maybe occasionally has low social value. So, for example, one of my friends is a member of something called Guerrilla Knitting. Okay, so this is a countrywide movement, and they knit stuff, and you wake up in the morning and your town or whatever is being transformed. Now, I think that's work. They've created something amazing but there's no economic transaction. And I think if we start thinking about work as something human beings do, which is creative and produces something, as opposed to an economic transaction, a lot of the technology stuff becomes much less scary, because yes, it replaces some of those other things, but I mean, I'm sure Bob will tell me that we could probably create a robot that's going to knit small red flowers and go and hang them on the tree in Cambridge Park. But really, so there's lots and lots of things that we do which I think come under the idea of work, and again that increases diversity, because we're not taking a highly narrow, westernised centric economic definition of what gives us personal satisfaction and makes us human. So maybe we could look at it as an opportunity to become more human in all of our lives, and that again, bringing diversity in. So, it's long answer.
Yeah, I completely agree, and actually, to the previous diversity question as well, My view was more, why are we talking about diversity in large organizations? It's like, there may be a lot of people that initially don't even want to work in those large organizations. And so in a way, I'm just following up on what's been said, but for me, diversity is placing people, finding the optimal place for a person where they actually feel the best, where they want to be, and where they're at their best in terms of performance as well. So it's not forcing, let's say, minorities into organizations where they're not happy or they're not at their best, they're not in a flow. I don't think that's diversity. For me, it's actually finding the best place for each individual to be in. But there's, of course, the responsibility of also promoting, or providing the opportunity for people to actually occupy certain spaces and see whether they like them. Because often, if you don't know, so as an example, if women don't want to be senior executives, that may be because they haven't been there ever. So it's like, that doesn't mean that they actually don't want to be there. Maybe if we give them the opportunity to be there, or that's more widespread, we will see women wanting to be there more often. So we can't necessarily judge it by what they say at the moment either. So we need to look at it in a slightly more deeper way. But I do think diversity is about not placing people in places, but actually finding what the optimal place for people are.
Well, at least we have 2 immigrants and 1 woman on this. Even though we're probably the not you immigrant. You can stay. But generally, when I look at it on a societal level, who am I to say that I'm any better than I don't know, a black, a gay, a Jew, whatever it might be? That in itself doesn't actually say anything. What I do know is that the more differences in thoughts, brain, etc. I have in an organization, the higher my chances are that we can come up with something new, good, innovative. And as such, I think it's a requirement almost that I try to get as many diverse bits into an organization as I possibly can. Now, as someone who, for most of my career, worked in tech and digital software development, etc. In software development, very, very few women. Asians bit more, very, very few black. And so how on earth can we do this? The education tech accelerator that I referred to earlier, we're based in Hackney Community College for a reason. Because Eton College is also a partner, but we basically have to go there and have to actively work there, because as you said, it is you cannot just say, well, we did a little survey. Guess what? Women don't want to be CEOs. If you basically have been told forever and a day that you don't want to be a CEO because you belong behind the stove, well, yes, And the same is true for ethnicity, and the same is true, for immigration. I'm one of Mrs. May's world citizens, and I very much feel at home in Britain as well as in many other places, because they add flavor and color in the best possible way. And given that, as you said earlier, we're looking at collaboration, collaborative models. We're looking at alternative ways to create value. That's why I earlier said that, to my mind, value isn't defined by a paycheck. So yes, that knitting, etc. But it's, if I do this and I like this, but if society doesn't actually recognize me for that, I will not actually be that happy a person. And we owe this to all of us as members of society to create a place and a way in which we deal with each other that is dignified.
Okay, guys, we're going to have to start wrapping up.
Right, so my talk will be quite short. I think it's all about bias and trying to stop it. You know, I was just thinking, you know, the industrial revolution and the way that organisations have been created is in a hierarchical way. And that means that everybody looks at the world in a hierarchical way. So there are those who have, those who have not, those who are not NSD, as far as, you know, my friends in Sotheby's would say, no Sotheby value, you know, all this kind of stuff. You know, everybody has it, and there's always the class below you, and there's always the class above you. I wish we could just get away from this and just look at how people are and develop their talents in the way that they can be developed, and give people it might be a bit pathetic in saying this, or seem pathetic, but I just believe that if you can give self-confidence, then everybody wins. And I think that is the key thing that I would like us as psychologists to be doing. Rather than saying, the assessment says you haven't got. You know what I mean? Will you move on, please?
I completely agree. I think we also need to be slightly careful about making judgments on superficial facts. One of the things we learn from AI and data is, you need lots of facts to make decisions. Assuming we're not diverse because we all look roughly the same, that's a dangerous assumption. Because I think we are very different as individuals and very different perspectives. So diversity isn't just about how we look differently, it's actually about how we are as people. I think that's really important.
I think we come to the party too late in some of the conversations we have once people are looking at within the corporate world. And by that I mean you have to take this way back beyond the entry point into employment. So this isn't a plug, but we inherited a community interest company from Steve Elton and David Cameron, which was put together during the rise, called Plotter. And Plotter looks at how do you bridge the gap between education and employment for 11 to 24-year-olds. And it's setting that pattern all the way through. And if any of you here have got children like I do, there's a psychometric game on it which is so ridiculously accurate for these kids. And you'd love to do it yourselves, by the way, because it is really accurate. But it really starts to assume certain things like career advice at school is appalling, career advice at college is appalling, career advice in universities is appalling, even some of the Oxford colleges, it's appalling. So if we can reset that part, pre-employment, I think we have a massive impact on the diversity agenda. And that's my humble opinion. Plotter.
Guys, thank you all very much. And I think just to close out as well, and partly to answer your challenge to the ABP on this, we did think very carefully about the panel, and we thought carefully about the diversity of experience that they could bring to the table. So we've got the CEO, we've got the business global head partner, we've got the business psychologist working in business, we've got the AI guy, robot, founder, VC, we've got the business psychologist lecturer, and we've got the ABP board member that's new to the table. We didn't limit our thinking to factors other than diversity of experience. And I personally think that experience that you've brought, and I think the insights that you've shared, I think are very helpful to help us be thinking about how we need to start steering and thinking about some of the things that we can do in the next decade or two. So, last round of applause, please, for our wonderful panel.
Do you want to go take a seat? I'll just. So, what are 2 days? Where are you on the 1 to 10 scale now in terms of energy?
Need a drink!
Time for a drink? Yeah. All right, I'm not going to, I just need like 3 minutes, 4 minutes of your time. Couple of logistical things. If you are an award finalist, an awards finalist, and you haven't received or picked up a certificate, and you're here, then please do that because they're on reception with Claire. Okay, so you can do that. If your programme is likely to go in the bin, then can you leave it on the table here because we just use them. It's helpful to use in marketing and just to show people what we're doing. If anyone is likely to be at the DOP conference in January and fancies spending a bit of time on, we'll probably have a stand there, and you want to big up the ABP at the BPS conference, then please contact us. And you can always get hold of us through admin@theabp.org.uk, or just connect to any of us on LinkedIn, and we'll put you in the right direction. So, can you, if you've got your program, can you just go to page 4 in it? We have done a lot over the 2 days to recognise the valuable work that the conference team has done. But I just want to say a kind of final thank you to the whole conference team, and just kind of point them out one by one, because I know some are in the room and some are not. So if you are in the room, could you just stand up, please? Come on, Emily. Okay, there's quite a few here. So I'm just going to say a little about each, and you've got more in the programme. Obviously, we have Sarah Jane, who was, I've said this a couple of times, but I gave her a blank sheet of paper and said, design your ultimate conference, and it emerged into this. So massive thank you to Sarah Jane. You can applause at the end. So massive thank you to Sarah Jane. Lucy then kind of took that and has completely run with it, and has got the team kind of together. And I mean, this has been, for me, a fantastic event, and that means the team must have been performing really effectively. And Lucy has had a major role in keeping that all working together. So well done, Lucy. We have Jo at the back, who was liaising with our sponsors, and has done a huge amount to look after them and ensure that they've been treated well. And if you look at the bios in here, you see we've got a mix here of people who have a lot of business experience with those who are kind of just coming into the field. And that mix makes this successful. And I'm saying that for a reason. Because if you are sitting there thinking, I'd kind of like to be involved in this, then there's a diversity of people in the team that makes this work. And equally, it doesn't mean, if more experience means actually you put less time into it because you know what you're doing. So please think about getting involved in this. We have Sky, who has been helping out with speakers and has been coordinating everyone and everything. So a big thank you to Sky for that. And Emily, who has also been working and has been supporting both Jo and Emily on the speaker and the sponsor team. And there are others in here. So there is Deborah Jocelyn, who basically made sure everything worked in the background. Kind of did all of the what did they say? She dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. Jade Jabasola, who you're at the back, Jade, who looks after our website. And does all of the updates to our website pretty much, and so was making the updates for the conference. Uzma Wasim, and also we've got 2 Uzmas. I mean, how is that even possible? Who have both been tweeting about the conference, and Uzma Wasim, who does our tweeting throughout, and Carolina, who's gone with Carolina, who helps with all the graphic design for everything. So, look, you know what I'm going to say. It doesn't happen without them, and they do it for nothing. Thank you. Just point out one major benefit of volunteering, especially if you know people who are just coming into this world and this field, is the chance to use it in interviews. So Jade is a perfect example. Just finished her MSc in occupational psychology. I met her at the DOP conference in January. She came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to get into this, get a job in this field. No, I'll keep doing that, but want to volunteer. We need help with the website. Do you know how to do that?" Sort of. Okay, so learn how to do it and help us out. Goes for an interview with CEB, and now is working there full time. This stuff works, huh?
And Emily.
Emily works psychology, yeah.
So, everything goes well. Anyone else get a job because of working here?
I think the chairman gets a round of applause too. I think you.
Is there anything, Lucy? Is there anything else I need to say?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to finish with a poem. This is one of my favourite poems, and for me, it's a poem about life, and it's a poem about learning. It's probably enough to say. It's called Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost, I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I should have not done this on my phone. I'm learning. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. You know where this is going. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street.